Hello, I'm Doreen Ellen Beldotan in Sfaten, Israel. And I'm all about equal opportunity and non-discrimination. So when I set out to offend people, I offend everybody across the board equally. So if you're a Karen from the Christian, transgender, or Jews in diaspora persuasion, you can all get up and leave now, because by the time I'm finished with this video, you're all going to be deeply offended. First of all, I'd like to address the Jews in diaspora, who are having the same plagues visited upon them as are being visited upon the evil Gentiles, because they insist upon shoving themselves up the backside of the Gentiles who hate them. You know good and goddamn well that Christians don't love you, that they don't mean well for you. But you insist upon being in their countries because you think it's economically worthwhile to do so. And if that's a choice you make, then don't be screaming anti-Semitism. When I came on Aliyah 40 years ago, I took a major reduction in standard of living. I was Jewish American princessing in Miami Beach with the best of them. I came here, and for 20 years I was living on a standard of living that was lower than what my grandmother had attained in her later years, because I was dedicated to the Jewish vision of what this world should be. But it isn't even like that anymore. It used to be an old joke, how do you make $1 million in Israel? You come here with 2 million. But that's an old joke. That's not the way it is. People can live here very, very well, probably on an equal, in some cases better standard of living than in Europe or America. So if you insist upon staying there, don't cry when they both hate you and when you also suffer the tortures of the damned that are being visited on the Gentiles. And now let's turn to the Christian transgender relationship, interaction. Why has the ancient Holy One of Israel brought this plague upon you? Oh yeah, and it is coming from God. Satan can't do anything without God's approval. This is coming directly to you from God personally. And we're going to talk about why. If you don't like what you're about to hear, leave now, because I promise you, you will be deeply insulted. When I hear what the Christians have to say about the transgenders, and I hear what the transgenders have to say, and I see the reaction of the Christian world to the transgender people, it's all so, so familiar. So familiar. What really drove it home was the other day there was a Christian complaining about the transgender people proselytizing to our children. Oh yeah, we Jews know a little bit about that. Everything that you Christians have done to the Jews and to other peoples all over the world is now coming back to you in a grotesque form. You are having a magnifying mirror held up to you in the hope that you can begin to see yourselves, but I know that probably most of you will not. So if you have the courage to listen, I'll break it down for you. Okay? The transgenders talk about non-binary, being non-binary. There are all kinds of genders and all kinds of sexes and all kinds of what's called in Hebrew ribui reshuyot. I don't know how to, a multiplication of authority, I don't know how you say it. Multiplication of what shouldn't ought to be multiplied. And your reaction to that is precisely the same shock and revulsion that we Jews feel when you Christians talk about the Trinity. Oh, oh. Haha, you hear that? You hear who's angry at you? Okay. Thank you, boss. And I find it very interesting that your Jesus iconology has always been sort of like he, she, they, you know? Like it's not only they with the Trinity, so the images are sort of like he, she. You know, the beard is perfectly manicured, and he's got the long hair, no split ends, you know, and on some, like, it looks like he's like got a little bit of mascara on. His eyebrows are done just so. And now you've got trannies that are doing the same thing, like a little bit more exaggerated, and you don't even understand that these boy girls that you're seeing with a beard and long hair are a lampoon on your icons of Yeshua. You don't get it. Pronouns. Oh yeah. Calling people by names that they should not be called by. He, she, they, them. Calling a person God. Referring to God in the first, second, and third person Trinity. Does this all sound familiar to you? We've been watching you playing out the same exact grotesque for 2,000 years, over 2,000 years. And now it's come home to roost to you in a form so grotesque and so revolting, even you can't stand it. Taking on fake names, you know, when people change their gender, John becomes Jane, right? And Mark becomes Marcy, and I don't know, Peter becomes Patricia, right? One of the things that disgusts us about Christians is when you try to take on Jewish names, Hebrew names, you can't even pronounce them, you don't know the meaning of them, but you take them on because you're putting on the dress. In exactly the same way that a tranny puts on a dress, you try to dress yourself up as being Hebrew-ish, right? So it is as perverse for someone whose name was John to now say his name is Jane as for someone to call himself John because he can't even pronounce Yochanan and doesn't know what it means. You get me? Good. Changing the meaning of terms. All of a sudden words don't mean what they used to. Sex and gender are not quite the same thing anymore, and all of this different sort of like word salad. And by the way, there was a Twilight Zone episode, which I think they remade in the 80s, was excellent, about a person who finds himself in a world in which terms are being used differently, and he's forced to eventually submit to it. Yeah, changing the meanings of terms. When you come to us, oh, you hear the roaring? Wow, God's mad at you. When you come to us and you say, oh, it's written there in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there is no New Testament, darling. What's new is not Testament, and what's Testament is not new. changing the meanings of the terms. Oh, don't you see that that relates to Yeshu? That's a prophecy of Yeshu. That's talking about Yeshu. No, it's not. And who the hell do you think you are to try to tell us how our holy writings say? And so to punish you for doing that, God has sent a whole army of freakazoids your way, and they're going to be changing their names and their terms and what things mean. And if you don't use words the way you do, your sorry Christian ass is going to jail or getting sued and screwed and glued. And you deserve it. The worst of it is the proselytizing to children. You get outraged and disgusted when you see the transgender people proselytizing to your children, trying to convert them and do things to themselves that are irreversible. Not long ago, a Christian missionary who had been putting on the garb of an Orthodox Jew was found operating together with his wife and his children in Israel to try to get Jews to convert. Now there's a law in Israel about adults trying to proselytize to children. So what did he do? He sent his children into an ultra-Orthodox school and taught them how to proselytize to other children. That sounds a lot to me like walking into the bathroom and you don't know who's there. Woohoo! Is God angry at you? You hear the amen? You hear the amen that I'm getting from that? I didn't start making this video and it was raining, by the way. It wasn't raining. It rained earlier. It started again when I started making this video. There's the punctuation marks. Let's talk about surgery, transgender surgery, cutting off your breasts, putting on a penis. The idea of somebody having skin peeled off the inside of their arm and having it grafted onto their lower parts to make a thing that's supposed to be a penis, but it's not really a penis, is exactly how we feel when you say that you've been grafted into Israel. You are no more grafted into Israel than sticking that piece of skin from their arm on the lower parts of their body makes them a man with a penis. And it is just as disgusting to us to hear you say that. In the same way that a transgender person cannot be transformed into the sex that they are not, by chemical means, by surgical means, by changing their behavior, by changing their name, by changing their dress, you can never be Israel. And you have lost your chance to be converted to Israel because you presume to try to call yourself Israel. In the same way that trannies are walking around trying to be what they're not, but the DNA shows what they are, you will never be Israel. The DNA shows you are not. Prosecuting and ostracizing those who won't accept the agenda. Ooh, boy, does this sound familiar. Shutting people up, censoring them. How many centuries were Jews forbidden to tell the truth, to defend ourselves, to defend our positions? And we were ostracized. We were ostracized from work. Does this sound familiar? We were ostracized from higher education, from professions, and those who dared to try to say something that was against the Christian agenda were prosecuted and destroyed. Does that sound familiar? It's all come back to you. So when I see the analogy perfectly. When I see how transgender people interact, or more correctly, impose themselves upon Christianity, I see the exact parallel of what Christianity did to the Jews. Suck up, bucko. It's not going away. This is the hell that you wished hell, you wished Armageddon on Jerusalem. You have gotten the hell you wished on the Jews. Just today, I heard that one of your nuclear submarines is on its way to the Black Sea. The ancient Holy One of Israel has positioned all those who wished Armageddon on Jerusalem, who fervently hoped for it. You hear the roaring? Who fervently hoped for it. To be now positioned, God has put you in the position of assured mutual annihilation. It's the Western branch of Christianity against the Eastern branch of Christianity. And you are going to take one another down, and we are going to continue to live in peace in Jerusalem. Thank you for listening. And I hope you're sufficiently offended and insulted.